If you want to see the next era of Disney, 2027 may be the year, because right now Disney parks are in a bit of a transition, and over the next few years we're going to start seeing some of the projects Disney fans have been waiting for finally begin to open. For example, Animal Kingdom is getting an entirely new land called Tropical Americas, with attractions inspired by Encanto and Indiana Jones. And over at Disneyland, Avengers Campus is expanding with new Marvel attractions that Disney has been teasing for a while. So if you're thinking about a future Disney trip, 2027 could actually be a really exciting time to go. But here's the part most people run into. The first time I started planning a Disney trip, I remember opening my computer and thinking this should be easy. And about 20 minutes later, I had 20 tabs open, 3 different hotel options, crowd calendars, ride videos, and I still wasn't sure if I was doing any of it right. Should we stay at a Disney resort or off property? Which park should we start with? How far in advance do you actually need to plan all this? And when a Disney trip can cost thousands of dollars, the last thing you want is that little voice in the back of your head saying, what if we're planning this completely wrong? But here's the good news. Once you understand the order of how to plan a Disney trip, it actually becomes much easier. And honestly, the planning itself can become part of the fun, because once you start imagining the rides, the food, the fireworks, and walking down Main Street, the anticipation starts long before the trip even begins. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to plan a Disney trip for 2027 step by step. And along the way, I'll also show you 3 costly planning mistakes people often make that can quietly make a Disney trip more expensive or more stressful than it needs to be. And one of those mistakes is something people often do before they even book their hotel. After planning quite a few Disney trips and making a few mistakes myself along the way, I've learned that when you follow a simple order, the entire planning process becomes much easier. So let's start with the first decision that shapes almost everything about your Disney trip. Now, if planning a trip for 2027 feels early, that's completely normal. But when it comes to Disney trips, planning ahead can actually make the whole experience smoother and less stressful. First, it gives you time to save for the trip. Disney vacations can add up quickly between park tickets, hotels, food, and souvenirs. When you start planning early, you can spread that cost out instead of feeling like everything hits at once. Second, early planning gives you more choices. The most popular Disney resorts and certain room types can sell out surprisingly early during busy travel seasons. When you start planning earlier, you have a much better chance of getting the resort you actually want instead of just choosing from what's still available. And third, it gives you time to understand how Disney planning works, because Disney trips have a few moving pieces, things like dining reservations, lightning lane strategies, and park planning. Having extra time to learn those things can make the trip much easier once you arrive. And honestly, when you're planning a future trip like 2027, that extra time can actually be fun, because you get to watch the parks evolve and see some of the new experiences start to appear. And that leads directly to the first step in planning your Disney trip. A quick note before I jump into the steps. In the video description, I will have links to companion videos that will dive a bit deeper into each step. Okay, let's get started. Step 1. Choose your travel dates. The dates you choose affect almost everything else about your Disney trip. Crowd levels, hotel availability, ticket prices, even ride wait times. Some weeks at Disney feel relatively relaxed. Other weeks can feel like the entire planet decided to visit Disney at the same time. So choosing your travel dates carefully can make a huge difference in the overall experience. You may want to look at things like school schedules, weather, and special events happening at the parks. And when you're planning for a future year like 2027, it's also worth keeping an eye on when new attractions might be opening, because new lands and new rides can draw a lot of attention when they first debut. For example, Disney is transforming part of Animal Kingdom into the new Tropical America's Land with attractions inspired by Encanto and Indiana Jones. And when Disney opens a brand new land, it can bring a lot of excitement and sometimes larger crowds. Now, this brings us to costly mistake number 1. Many people choose their travel dates before checking crowd patterns or major holidays, and that one decision can accidentally place their entire trip right in the middle of peak crowds. Taking a little time to research travel dates first can make the rest of the planning process much easier. And once you have your travel window in mind, the next decision becomes much clearer. Step 2, decide between Disney World and Disneyland. If you're planning a trip this far in advance, there's a good chance you're still deciding which Disney destination makes the most sense for your trip. Disney World in Florida is massive. It has 4 theme parks, dozens of resorts, and enough attractions that you can easily spend several days exploring everything. And over the next few years, Disney World is where we'll likely see many of the major park expansions begin to open. Disneyland in California is much more compact. The parks are closer together, easier to navigate, and many people feel it's a little less complicated to plan. But Disneyland is also evolving. Avengers Campus is expanding with new Marvel attractions and a ride that I am personally looking forward to, a Coco ride inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean. Both destinations are incredible experiences, but they offer very different styles of trips. Planning early gives you time to research both and decide which one fits your travel style, travel time, and how many days you want to spend at Disney. And speaking of planning the trip, this is where the next step becomes really important. Step 3, start a Disney trip budget. One of the most helpful things you can do early in the planning process is create a rough Disney trip budget. You don't need exact numbers yet, but it helps to understand the main pieces of the trip. Park tickets are usually the biggest expense. Then there's the hotel, food inside the parks, lightning lane options, souvenirs, and transportation. Planning this part early helps avoid a situation where you start booking things and then realize the total cost is much higher than expected. When you start early, you can adjust things gradually. Maybe change the hotel category, adjust the length of the trip, or shift spending toward the experiences that matter most to you. Before we move on to where to stay, there's one thing that makes planning a 2027 Disney trip especially interesting right now. Over the next few years, Disney parks are going to start opening some of the projects fans have been waiting for. Animal Kingdom is getting the new Tropical America's Land, and Disneyland is expanding Avengers Campus with new Marvel attractions. So the next few years are shaping up to be a really interesting time for the parks. And if you're thinking about a 2027 trip, it's actually kind of fun to be planning right now because you get to watch these projects come together and decide if you want to include them in your trip. Now, let's talk about the next big decision that shapes your Disney vacation. Next, step 4, choosing where to stay. Where you stay can completely change the feel of your Disney trip. Disney resorts offer some big advantages. You're immersed in the Disney atmosphere. You often have convenient transportation to the parks, and there are perks like early park entry. But there are also many off-site hotels that can offer larger rooms or lower nightly prices. Both options can work well depending on your travel style and budget. But this is where costly mistake number 2 often happens. Some travelers wait too long to book their Disney resort, and during busy travel seasons, certain resorts and room types can sell out much earlier than people expect. Booking earlier gives you more choices and helps avoid scrambling for last-minute options. And once you know where you're staying, the next step can make a big difference in how smooth your park days feel. Okay, step 5, create a simple park strategy. You don't need a minute-by-minute schedule for your Disney trip, but having a simple park strategy can make the experience much smoother. Think about things like which rides are must-do attractions, which parks are your top priorities, and how many park days you want. Planning those things ahead of time helps avoid wandering around the parks wondering what to do next. And it also helps you decide when lightning lane options might make sense for certain rides. And there's actually another interesting thing about planning a trip a year or two in advance. Sometimes Disney trips become even more exciting exciting because new things open between the time you start planning and the time you arrive. Disney parks are constantly evolving. New attractions open, new shows appear, entire lands sometimes transform. So if you're thinking about a trip in 2027, you might arrive right when some of these new experiences are starting to debut, which honestly makes the anticipation of planning the trip even more fun. But there's one planning step many people overlook until it's almost too late, and it can affect your trip every single day you're in the parks. Step 6, dining reservation strategy. Dining can be a really fun part of the Disney experience. There are character meals, themed restaurants, and some places that people plan their entire day around, but popular restaurants can book up quickly. And this leads to costly mistakes. Mistake number 3, waiting too long to make dining reservations. Many Disney restaurants open reservations about 60 days in advance, and some of the most popular locations can fill very quickly. Knowing that timeline ahead of time helps you plan those reservations without stress. Planning a Disney trip for 2027 might feel early, but it actually gives you some real advantages. You have more flexibility choosing travel dates, more time to save and plan your budget, and a better chance of getting the resort and experiences you really want. And if some of the new Disney projects begin opening around that time, it could make the trip even more exciting. And when you follow these steps and avoid the costly mistakes we talked about today, the planning process becomes a lot less overwhelming. And in fact, it can become part of the fun, because imagining the rides, the parks, the food, and the memories you're about to create, that anticipation is part of the Disney experience too. If you're thinking about a Disney trip in the next couple of years, I'm curious, are you leaning more toward Disney World in Florida or Disneyland in California? Let me know in the comments. As always, I truly appreciate you watching. What questions do you have about planning a Disney trip? Post them below and I will do my best to answer them. And with that, if you found this helpful, like and subscribe for future videos. Once again, thank you, and I will see you in the next video.